possible. So this is our only record that you're here. So please take a moment to sign in. Also, if you're wanting to hear this presentation in Spanish, we got you covered. So I'm going to ask my colleague Carmen to come on and give instructions to hear this in Spanish. Carmen.
Buenos días a todos y bienvenidos a la reunión del día de hoy. Si gustan escuchar esta interpretación en español, abajito en su computadora o su laptop, en el tablero, en la inferior de su pantalla, van a mirar un símbolo del mundo y ahí mismo van a poder elegir el idioma de preferencia, que será el español. Si están en su teléfono celular o su tableta, abajo también en el tablero van a mirar 3 puntitos donde dice more or más y allí van a poder elegir la interpretación en español. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Carmen. And finally, for those of us, our colleagues here who are on lockdown from Google Docs, we've got you covered as well. This is the QR code for the sign-in sheet. So I'm going to leave it up here for a moment. If you are scrambling to get your phones, don't worry, we'll have it at the end of the presentation as well. So again, this is for the people who are unable to access Google directly with the sign-in sheet. So you just take a moment, you snap it with, if you've got the iPhone, it's through your photo, and if it's if you've got a Samsung, it's on your settings in your drop down. So I'll just leave this up here for a moment. And again,
I'm so sorry, can you move it over? It's like to one side right now. I don't know if everybody sees it that way.
I'm not sure. I'm looking at my screen and I see it completely uncovered. Is anybody else having an issue? Okay, so again, the QR code is there to sign in, and what we'll do is, again, we'll have it at the end of the meeting as well. So again, that's for the people who are unable to access. And happy St. Patrick's Day. So not only is it happy Friday, but we're also happy St. Patrick's Day. So to all our Irish friends out there, happy St. Patrick's Day. And finally, some inspirational words to get us started. So we all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color. Maya Angelou. And so today we are Friday, March 17th. We're here. Our topic is gender, diversity, inclusion. And we are so happy to have with us Shana Green. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can properly introduce Miss Green. And so Miss Green is a multi-passionate change agent who carries a mandate for liberation, a heart for progress, and a desire to disrupt the status quo. She shows up as a Black, lesbian, ordained pastor and advocate. She is a veteran, a highly sought after speaker, anti-racism educator, and a licensed emotional emancipation circle facilitator. Shana believes that practicing liberative living for themselves and those in their community of care means encouraging us all to lay into radical truth-telling, radical rest, radical joy, and radical wellness. The Reverend Shana Green has one teenage son and enjoys the relationship she shares with her wife, Ingrid. It's my pleasure to introduce Shana Green. Shana.
Thank you, Tracy. I am so pleased to be here with you again. It's been a while, so hello, everyone. I do not think I'm super cool. I'm not wearing shades, but the sun is on the other side of my laptop, you see, and I got these new transitionals, and so they have transitioned. So I am not like walking around wearing my sunglasses during the daytime. So I apologize if you can't see my eyes, but when I want to make a real good point, I'll take them off so you can really see my face, because that is part of the training too. I am going to share my screen. And just a reminder, make sure your mics are muted, come off mute when you need to speak, and then try to mute again so we don't get any feedback. Let's share this screen here. All right, Tracy, thumbs up if you can see it. Perfect. So as Tracy said in that wonderful introduction, I am Shana Green. I am here representing Inclusive Growth Strategies and our founder, Danielle Johnson. Part of who she is to make sure that queer folks teach queer trainings. And so I appreciate her. Thank you, Tracy, for seeking and supporting Black women in their business leanings and making sure that you guys get this DEI training from people who are both marginalized and live in our colonial oppressive systems. So I appreciate it. As Tracy said, I am newly married. I'm a mom, a veteran. I currently work through the daytime as a manager of an IT support team. I pastor a small little hush harbor that is constantly organically growing, where we teach and preach an inclusive and belonging and affirming message. I love to connect with folks. I'm always willing to have a conversation. So here is my social media. Feel free to reach out or to follow to continue the chat. So I always like to start with this because the topics that we're about to explore and discuss can cause a little bit of resistance. This conversation on gender diversity, while gender and diversity are not new words, this idea of what is cisgender, what is transgender, what are pronouns, and all of those things sometimes cause people to get a little all twisted up inside, whether it is because of their religious beliefs or because of how they've been raised and conditioned, or whether it's because they just don't agree. So I want to offer you the opportunity to have agency over yourself and your opinions and your views now. Your resistance to an idea or statement reveals an opportunity to increase your awareness and education while also offering the potential for immense growth. I am not here to make you agree with me. I am not here so that we all walk away singing Kumbaya or the Black national anthem. We will not be lifting every voice and then singing. I am here to sow some seeds. I am here to offer you opportunities to grow and to learn new things and to consider new ideals. What you do with that opportunity, see, that's your business. But try it out, listen to it, throw it around. You don't got to agree today. Just take your time. If at any time the conversation does get to a point where the resistance has got too great, breathe, take care of yourselves. Take a moment, step away, take a bio break, get a snack. This is not a forced training. So I just want to make sure everyone is taking good care. All right, now that the prequel is out, don't look like nobody left, we will get started. And give me 1 second. I'm trying to see more of you all because it's a lot of people in here and they only want me to see 2 of you. Okay. All right, for the unlucky, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So right now I got 21 people on the screen. I'm gonna call on y'all for everything. So since you don't know what the 21 people are, just everybody be ready. And I might try to remember to flip the page, but life has no guarantees. So the Q stands for, I know a lot of people call all the letters the alphabet soup, and I get it. But what we're going to discuss today is some language. We're going to talk about gender, biological sex versus cisgender, transgender. We'll talk about the difference between sexual identity and sexual orientation. And I will go over all the letters in this perceived alphabet soup that is LGBTQIA2+. That's the first test you got to pass in the lesbian club. You got to be able to say all the letters real fast. So I have received my pen. Gender. Let's talk about gender. Gender is first and foremost a social construct. I know, that goes against every gender reveal you've been to. That goes against the blue section and the pink section in Target. That goes against doll babies and trucks that you think that certain people are supposed to play with. But gender is the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. So this idea that girls wear pink, boys wear blue. Girls can wear nail polish, boys can't. Boys play with Tonka trucks, girls play with Betsy Wetsy, or I don't know why I said Betsy Wetsy, but you know what I mean, the little doll baby that cries and pees and all of that. This includes the norms, behaviors, and roles. So that means in heteronormative relationships, sometimes, and heteronormative just means that in our society, it is culturally and socially normal for two different gendered people to be married, heterosexual people. And so a lot of heteronormative behavior is women cook or the men cut the grass, or the women take care of the children, or the male goes out to work. I'm not saying it's right. I am just telling you what our social constructs are. As a social construct, gender varies from society to society and can change over time. So that's why we're having this conversation, right? Because we have people that are transgendered, we have people that are still cisgendered but have a different sexual orientation or go by different pronouns. We have people who are gender fluid or non-gender conforming, meaning they may not identify, or they have are trying to get away from this binary of gender being male or female. And we'll get more into that later. I'm gonna try to remember to talk about what it is to be binary and non-binary. I get really excited about that. It makes me real hyped. So we'll see what happens. Biological sex. That is the label you're given at birth based on your medical factors, including your hormones, chromosomes, and genitals. Most people are assigned male or female. So biological sex is based on your outward markers, hormones, your sexual organs, whatever that may be. The doctor assigns you a gender at birth. Of course, we all know that there are intersex people who are born with certain markers from both what is considered male or female, and generally, and I believe, unfortunately, the parents get to decide oftentimes what gender they would like that child to be. So they'll kind of base it on what's the external sex organs, or what, and sometimes what they want. And a lot of times those kids get older and hormonally they feel better represented, or mentally, physically, they feel better represented in another gender, but it's already too late. The parents have had surgeries and done all of these things. So from a biological sex perspective, it is generally male or female, but there are people that are intersex. The term used to be hermaphrodite, but they do not use that term anymore. They use intersex. We use intersex. It's more inclusive and more representative of the actual medical condition. Ooh, that went way far. Close your eyes, hold on. I clicked and it went to slide 25. Somebody was hoping I'd be done. I know how I go. All right, here we go. Cisgender, denoting or relating to a person whose sense of personal identity and gender corresponds with their birth sex. I was assigned female at birth. While I choose not to identify within the social constructs of gender, to look at me, I was born and I was identified as female at birth, and I am still identifying as female. So some would say cisgendered. So cis just means same. CIS in front of anything is same. And so it's the same gender you were given when you were born. So when people talk about all of the J.K. Rowling stuff, or all of the TERF stuff, or all of those things, they are talking about cisgendered women who want to protect womanhood and don't include trans women as women in that way. So they are called TERFs, trans exclusionary radical feminists. Oh my gosh, if this thing keep doing this right here. We are having technical difficulties. Y'all gonna get seasick watching all these slides roll by like this. So next we have transgender. Transgender are people that have a gender identity or gender expression that's different from the sex that they were assigned at birth. So you can have a person who was assigned female at birth that identify and recognize that they are better represented and better expressed through maleness. And so they are F to M, female to male, transgender persons. Around the other way, you can have a male who is assigned male at birth, who says, no, this is not who I am. I am a woman. I'm a woman. I'm trapped in this body. I have this dysphoria. So here's my name. Here's who I am now. That is transgender. So a lot of the conversation right now, and what we'll get into is in the scenarios, a lot of states are looking to ban trans sports for kids. They're trying to ban a lot of trans programs and protections that transgender people have under certain legislature. The thing about transgender is, regardless of where in the transition they are, if a person tells you they are transgender, believe them. Whether they still look like whatever sex they no longer identify with, no matter if you don't think that they can pass or can show up as a different gender, that has nothing to do with it. See, the thing about sexual orientation and gender diversity is what a person chooses truly has nothing to do with you. Now, outside of some personal things happening in your own home with people making those decisions that you may weigh in or not weigh in on, if the person at the Walgreens used to look one way and you go in next week to pick up your prescription and they look a different way, honor the pronoun. Call them by their name. Don't say nothing. Don't, I think as a society, we are so conditioned to speak our minds. There are some things that your mind does not need to matter. Like, you do not have to get into that kind of business. It's about respecting each other and humanizing each other in a way that lets everyone feel seen, even if you don't agree, even if it's not necessarily how you would have went about it. So this is the part where everyone gets in an uproar, gender identity versus sexuality and who a person chooses to date. So gender identity is your deeply held inner feelings of whether you're female or male, both or neither. Your gender identity isn't seen by others. Gender identity may be the same as the sex you were assigned at birth or not. So your gender identity is how you identify: male, female, gender non-conforming, non-binary. So binary simply means two, a choice of two. In computer language, is like ones and zeros. It's he or she. It's this idea, it's masculine, feminine. So you have non-binary people who do not subscribe or do not identify within that small limit of choices. The interesting thing is, when you move from English into other languages, whether they're native and indigenous languages, whether they are African languages, whether they are Spanish and French, there are ways to articulate without the binary. There are ways to articulate gender. There are ways to articulate different things without it simply being male or female. And so I find that to be very interesting, since we have limited this one area to male or female. When nature shows you, science shows you, there are people, there are animals, there are all sorts of things that are either non-binary or that don't fit just a simple male or female classification. The next part is sexual orientation. It's who you're attracted to, who you feel romantically, emotionally, and sexually attracted to. So this is where I want to talk about the argument or the conversation around, can children determine what their gender is? Can children determine, or can children know who they are? And I always like to use the example, when I was a kid, about 4 years old, I knew my favorite color was purple. I knew what I liked to wear. I knew who I thought made me feel safe and who didn't make me feel safe. I knew the food I liked and the food I didn't like. And the things I did not eat at 5, honey, I am still not eating it today. Do not put that on this plate. And so sexual orientation versus gender identity, children, a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old is not saying, mommy, I want to have sex with boys or I want to have sex with girls. They're not choosing a sexual orientation. A child is choosing their sexual identity, their gender identity, which is not seen by others, is what you feel on the inside. It's how you see yourself. It's who you were fearfully and wonderfully made to be. And so when Zaya Wade, daughter of Dwayne Wade, and bonus daughter of Gabrielle Union, came out as trans and Dwayne supported her, there was a lot of backlash about, can this teenager, can this young person determine what their gender is? Now it is up to you to form your own opinions on that and determine where you land on that. But I just want to be clear that that a child that says, mommy, daddy, auntie, grandma, and grandpa, I know you say I'm this, but I feel like I am this, is not saying I'm ready to have sex with this person or that person or this person. They are two totally independent things. So when we talk about sexual orientation, that is a big full spectrum. So a person, I know one thing that sparks a lot of conversation is if a person is trans, and they date a same gender, does that make them gay? Does that make them a lesbian? The easiest way I can answer that question is let them tell you and believe it. If they identify as a trans lesbian, let them, hey, they are a trans lesbian. If they identify as a trans sapiosexual, which is a person who is attracted to intellect, let them be. Who are we to decide? The spectrum is so fluid and goes beyond heterosexual norms, which is generally male and female bondings. You have pansexual people who are attracted on a much different basis than just gender or romantic orientation. You have asexual people. You have demisexual people. You have people who are gray between, you have aromantic people. So people who can't have sex outside of romance, people that have no desire to have sex at all, but crave platonic relationship. So the spectrum is really wide. So for us to just be kind of trying to clock somebody's sexuality or clock somebody's orientation, that can be exhausting because people exist and can exist in two different scales, two different spectrums at the same time. It's a lot going on up in here. So again, this is the part where I say, if a person tells you, believe them and go with it or mind your business, because you'll find yourself caught up in a conversation that you may not be able to have because it is such a full spectrum. People get to, and I say get to not because it is a right or a privilege, but because I'm thankful that we have the choice to express and to live as we want to, even when it's dangerous. Black trans women are the most targeted population in this country. They are dying at staggering rates without police intervention, without investigation. They're being dead named in public, which means the name you no longer want to use, people are still using it. So just think about a population that still says, I'm going to be who I am, even though I know how unsafe it can be. I'm going to be who I am, even though I know what the outcome may be based on what's happening to my trans and queer siblings. We have to become safe harbors. We have to, even with our beliefs, even with what we think and what we feel, we have got to, and I encourage us to just become beacons of safety. You don't have to agree with someone not to kick them off the cliff like Sparta, like 300. Like, it's not that far of an extreme. You don't have to, you can disagree and still be human. You can disagree and still have compassion. And you can disagree and still be educated in a way that allows you not to do harm. Because that's what this is all about. Why do we do DEI work? Why have you been to these classes? Why do you show up for these things? It is all about minimizing harm. Minimizing harm to you, minimizing harm to your coworkers, minimizing harm in our communities. Here are the letters: LGBTQ, 2IA, lesbian, that is women, same gender loving. Gay generally refers to men, but it is used synonymously. Bisexual, that is a person who has attraction to both genders. Transgender, we went over that pretty well. Queer used to be a bad word in LGBTQ circles, but it has started to be reclaimed first by Black femmes, but now by much more people are feeling more comfortable identifying as queer. They may not feel comfortable with the label of lesbianism or the label of bisexuality or gayness. So queer kind of becomes a catch-all of a bit. Questioning is also another thing the Q can stand for. That's someone who's almost certain they're not heterosexual, but they really don't know how they fall into any of the other categories yet. Two-spirit is from our indigenous community, where two-spirit people that have both, feel that they have both genders represented, has been from the beginning of time and has just started being talked about and added more as more indigenous people come out and share that bit of sacred community with us. We talked about intersex a bit. We talked about asexual a bit. And there are still other identities that fall outside of these cisgender and heterosexual paradigms. Okay, so y'all just got a lot of information. Let me look at the chat and see what's happening over there.
Yeah, I was Sean, I was gonna say, this is Tracy. Letitia had brought up some good points, and I think people are responding to her, but I think it would be better if you did. She's asking several questions like, why are there so many labels to one person? And then why do people have to identify? How come you can't be who you are, rather male or female? So I think that would be a question for you to answer.
Sure. I think I just saw that too. So the thing about it is we live in a society, unfortunately, that from the time of colonization has placed people in categories. If you were Black, you were enslaved and didn't count as a person. If you were Native, your land was taken and now you are policed and put on reservations and in reservation schools. Our society here in America, in these colonized United States, our society has been built on categories. And when you don't identify in the norm of those categories, whether that's white supremacy, patriarchy, colonialism, when you don't fit into those things, it's so much harder to get access to resources, to get access to care, to have your rights protected. And so there was a time where it wasn't all these letters, Letitia. I agree. There wasn't all these ways to identify. You could just be who you were, but you had no rights. You had no ability to have access to anything. And so when the LGBTQ started coming out and we started kind of labeling things, it was to recognize and to give names to this protected class of people. It was to offer people the opportunity to put a name to who they were, what they were experiencing. And in terms like cisgender, transgender, those all come out of classifications that exist in nature, that exist in science. So humans don't only hold the real estate on being trans or cis or whatever the case may be. But it's just, and I agree with you. I know for me and for my wife, we try to avoid labels at all costs, because as soon as you label something, it's dehumanized. As soon as Black people became slaves and not people, we became commodities, right? As soon as a person is lesbian and not a human, now my rights is funny. People are looking at me behind my back, people talking crazy. But it really is about categorizing things so that we can organize, so that we can advocate, so that there's an understanding of what this term means in this group of people, so that they can be protected. We are human, Lakeisha. And another aspect of it is you don't have to identify. The thing that I love about the queer community is you get to exist in it any way you want to. So there are people who's like, I'm not gay, I'm not bi, I'm not nothing, I just do what I want to do. There are people who be like, I'm trisexual, I'll try everything. That's what Tevin Campbell said. I said, oh my, but okay, if that's what you like it, I love it. But that's the Black person way of saying, oh no, I wouldn't do that. But there are multiple ways and multiple types of ways to exist in this space. So if you don't like categories or labels, you don't got to use them. No one owes anyone a coming out of sorts. No one owes anybody this idea that, well, are you trans or are you not trans? None of your business. Like, if I'm not in relationship with you, if I'm not about to copulate and consummate our relationship with you, it is none of your business what I am. Because a lot of this conversation, and I'm gonna keep it totally 100 with you. A lot of this conversation around LGBTQ2IA plus things and gender diversity has nothing to do with what people are doing out here in public. It has everything to do with what people do in the privacy of their own homes and in their bedrooms. And that's the problem. Nicole says, I think having a name to it helps the person know that they are not alone and they're valid. Absolutely, absolutely. So, well, y'all really giving it in this chat. Don't waste it in uselessness. You better say that, Lakeisha. So any other questions? So far, have you learned anything you didn't know? Has anything become clear? I'm about to make my screen real big so I can see everybody. And still y'all came through 98 strong. Is there anyone who has any questions? Feel free to unmute your mic or want to share kind of where you are right now. How's your spirit? How you feeling in your body? You're not ready to storm my house, are you?
I will say something. I'm not going to come on camera because I'm in my bed, but I really appreciate this offering here because I have just been trying to figure out where all of this fits. And I know that I didn't have the answers, and I know that I wasn't prepared to have the conversations, not because it's uncomfortable for me, but because I didn't have access to the language. And when you don't have access to the language, your world is limited. Your world is limited by your vocabulary. So I'm very thankful that you've presented this to me today. It has opened up my eyes a lot, and I look forward to going out into the world and respecting people and holding them in whatever space they need to be held in. So thank you.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you are so right. When you do not have the language, your world, your ability to do things is so limited. That is the truth. Anyone else have anything before I start calling on random people? I don't want to act like that today, but I will.
I do have something to say.
Okay.
And I don't want to offend anyone, but where did the word queer come from? I think that's such an offensive word.
So the word queer, just truly, I can give you two words for what queer means: anti-establishment. When you look up queer in the dictionary, it is someone that goes against the norm of what's considered normal. Anti-establishment. I just taught a lesson on Jesus as queer because he was anti-establishment. So the word isn't simply resolved to or reserved for LGBTQ people. Queer can mean anything that goes against societal, cultural, economic, or established rules of society.
Yeah, not many people know that. It just sounds like a nasty word.
It used to be in the generation before mine, Miss Carol. I am still in my youth. I just want everybody to know I'm 43, which is still very young. So the generation before me, they thought it was just the same as the F word that people used to slur gay men. Like, they considered it horrible. But in my generation, it's kind of been a bit of a reclaiming. We have reclaimed our time and we have reclaimed that word. And so some people still find it offensive. They do. And some people still have a lot of feelings attached to it. But from
and
a
you know what?
standpoint,
It just seems like times are reversing right now, especially with the N word. It's like okay now to call somebody that. You
Not
know,
me. Mm-mm. It ain't
Wait a
not.
minute, wait a minute. No, no,
It's
no.
not okay.
We don't say that. We don't, I don't listen to music with that in it. We not
Mhm.
doing that one.
Mhm. Yeah, but and I think society again, Carol, to not Carol, what's Miss Carol that said that? Again, to that, yeah, to that point, I think in certain communities, people have let themselves believe that it's okay, but it's not. Now, if you choose to say queer or not, that is up to anyone. But just as an aside, based on what you said, it is never okay. I don't care if you do it with the hard R or the soft R. I don't care if you make it end in an A. It is never okay. The N word is now and has forever been a slur. And it is still represented that way. So I don't want to be the one on this training to make anybody feel like it is. And I think there can be some dire circumstances and consequences of that, especially when you deal with diverse populations. Miss Lakeisha?
I just want to clarify. I didn't mean that it's okay, but with the younger generation now, they go around,
Mm, yeah,
let
they
that
do be
word
saying it,
flow
Miss Carol.
more freely.
My prayers that they stop because it's dangerous. Lakeisha?
Thank you, Shana, for having me and you being here. This group. Oh my goodness. I just want to elaborate off of what the first speaker said. Having the language is a tool, is a resource, because when you're in spaces and you want to feel confident, you don't want to offend anyone, and not realize that you're offending anyone, because that be the major problem, is that you're not trying to offend anyone intentionally, but not having the correct language. Of course, you do offend people. And then that's when the space comes, like, oh, especially if you don't have the tools and the resources to be able to speak on this situation. So this is valuable. Are we gonna get like a copy of this recording so we can be able to, like,
Yes,
because I
Lakeisha.
didn't take notes.
Yeah, Lakeisha, this, when the training is complete, this will be sent out to everyone. Yes. And if, yeah, and if
blessing.
Shauna wants to choose to send me the presentation, because some facilitators do, some don't, then we will send that out as well.
A
I'll send it
blessing.
to you.
And then just one more, as far as like the N word, I'm here in Boston, Mass, and I do unfortunately hear a lot of the young children referring to themselves and to their sisters and brothers as that word. But what I think they don't realize is that a nigger is just an ignorant person. So that's what a nigger is. It's an ignorant person. So anybody that uses that language is just ignorant. And I think our children are not aware that that's what the definition of it is, because I think if they have more knowledge, like we're getting knowledge today behind the LGBTQ, and sorry if I'm missing any letters, but I think the same way that we're getting knowledge behind this today, if we give our children knowledge on what the N word really means, I don't think that they will be using it as much either. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much, Lakeisha. I'll take one more. Nicole?
Thank you. I wanted to explain myself with respects to the queer. So, I'm the same age as you, and it's still hard for me to hear. And I think so much of it is because it was so derogatory when I was a youth, that when I hear that word, it's like, it cringes for me. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to mention is that, like, we do have these words and these labels, if you will, and they're awesome.
Mhm.
But not everybody will identify with those too. And so like you were mentioning, some lesbians don't identify or don't like that word, and they'll say that they're gay. you know, and I think that's important to, you know, everybody to understand is, you know, my wife and I don't like to say lesbian. I like to say gay. You know, and my daughter says that we're gay as well. But my wife feels lesbian is more appropriate. So, you know, it's a very personal kind of journey.
I agree with you, Nicole. And I know that look, I'm about to say the Q word. I know that queer gets people all caught up and all tight because it was derogatory. And I think that most important thing about what you said is people get to call themselves. Alice Walker talks about the most powerful thing that you get to do is when you name yourself. So what you decide to call yourself, who you feel you are, who you know you are, you get to decide. My wife does not call herself lesbian either. She just be like, she my wife. But I be like, I'm lesbian, I'm queer, I'm whatever. I don't care, you see, because I do a lot of advocacy work. And I have to lead with that because I have the privilege of passing. If you run into me and I don't got on 200 rainbows, you don't know if I'm gay or not unless you see me PDA with old girl at the house. So I have to lead with it because of the work that I do. And even within the scope. So y'all about to get the good tea. I don't usually teach this part, but I like y'all. So look, I leaned in and put my hand up. So when you talk about lesbianism, there are categories within lesbians. You have what some used to call the more butch lesbians or the femmes. You have lipsticks and pillow princesses. You have in the gay community, you have tops, you have bottoms, you have verse, like all of it kind of like there's so many things that a person can be. We got to let people live. Lydia, I saw you raise your hand too. Represent, I see you, I see you. But there's so many different ways that we can be represented and so many different ways that we can identify. That's why I just say, like Auntie Maya Angelou said, when a person tells you who they are, believe them. That just don't mean negatively. That doesn't just mean if a person shows you they a liar, believe them. It means if a person shows you and tells you who they are, believe it. So I'm about to make my screen a little smaller. Thank y'all so much for engaging. I didn't have to call on nobody. Life is good this Friday. Oh, look, we got another Auntie Maya quote. Do the best you can until you know better. When you know better, you do better. I would like to take a little license and add one little piece to Ancestor Maya's saying here. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. There's a step in between there. There's a step where you have to apply what you know. If you go to the gym and you get all sweaty and nasty and you just come home and rinse off with water, you still smell the same. You have to apply soap in order to make a difference in that odor. So it's not enough to just know better. You have to apply what you know in an active way and then do better. So we are going to talk about pronouns. So inclusion versus belonging. Inclusion is the act or the process of including people in whatever's going on. All these companies got these big DEI policies and diversity, equity, inclusion, hashtag, everybody's talking about inclusion. But is that really enough? Is it enough that I be included if I don't feel like I belong? Belonging is that next step in this whole DEI process. Belonging is when not only are people included, but they feel like they have a voice, they feel like they have a say. It's not just this proverbial seat at the table. Don't give me no seat. I'll stand up. Give me a say. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of this heart be acceptable. Hear from me so that things can actually change. So I want us to move beyond and start pushing back and challenging on this idea of inclusion. It's 2023 and we still talking about inclusion. We don't need to write no more books. We don't need to have no more marches. They know better. The people that are excluding people, they know better. So now let's move into belonging. How can we make our organizations safe harbors? How can we make our organizations representative of the demographic of the state, of the city, of the populace that we serve? That's belonging. Inclusion, oh, see, I did real good. I forgot that slide was there. I did it freestyle. Let's skip. Intersectionality. So when we talk about gender issues and LGBTQ2IA+ issues, we have to do so with this lens of intersectionality. Intersectionality is a term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who also was in the group that did critical race theory and some of those other things, which, in case you didn't know, here's a freebie. Critical race theory ain't never been taught in nobody's elementary school. It's a college legal framework for justice and for the legal system. So that is just to throw that in there if you're one of those states that's working to try to ban that. It never existed in elementary, middle, or high school. But intersectionality is how we see where power comes and collides, where it interlocks. So for example, let's say I work a job, which I do, and let's say I can't get a promotion. And they know I'm a lesbian. I'm a chocolate girl, so they know I'm Black. It ain't no mistaking that. They know how much I make. They know where I live. They don't have all those things. So when it's time to have a conversation with someone about why I'm not getting promoted, it's not only a queer issue. We have to ask ourselves, how does race, how does her identity, how does her gender, how does class, how does housing, how do all of those things intermix? Because if we say it's only because she's queer, they'll say, oh, well, our policy right here says any age, sex, and gender is welcome, and you haven't solved the problem. So intersectionality is just having a lens that recognizes the nuance of inequality and gender issues. So somebody may need housing and they're getting denied. It may not be because of their income. It may be that they're transgender and the landlord is having an issue. The landlord's transphobic. We can't just solve that problem by throwing money at it. We have to deal with the transphobia. And you would miss that if you weren't looking for the places of intersection. Pronouns. Pronouns, I, me, el, Elia, he, she, herself, you, it, they, each, few, many, who, you can read. You see all of those. All those are pronouns. We have grand experience using pronouns. People act like they have never used a pronoun a day in their life when we start having this conversation, but we are pronoun down. When you talk about, oh, mom went to the store, well, what time is she coming back? Well, there's a pronoun. So this idea that we can't do it is a fallacy, but I do understand that sometimes when a person may not, in your mind, in our mind, they may not look how the pronoun identifies, you may struggle. So what do we say? When they correct you, believe them. Somebody can be they, them. Someone can be, we use they all the time. Where did they go? What did they say? Somebody, you call your good girlfriend, child, I talked to Tracy the other day, what they say? Like, you know, we know what pronouns are and how to use them. It's not as difficult as we think. It's just the practice, which is why a lot of straight people put their pronouns in their bios to get people more confident. So when a transgender or a non-binary person does it, they're not singled out. Oh, they just want attention. No, they just want to be seen. They want to be valued. They want to be held in community. Why are pronouns important? Because they honor identity and lived experience. They create inclusive environments and they move us towards belonging. Practice. Allen Iverson said, practice. What's practice? Practice is to perform an activity or exercise a skill repeatedly or regularly in order to improve or maintain one's proficiency. The key to pronouns is to ask about them, say them, and know. Yes, Nicole?
I don't want to be that girl, but I need to say this. So I want to put this out there so like everybody kind of gets it. If somebody negates to mention their pronoun. I don't feel that we need to push that and ask them what their pronoun is, because they might be presenting in a way that doesn't identify with what they feel the pronoun should be at that point, if I'm making any sense at all.
And I think that is true in some circumstances, but I guess you have to make a choice, Nicole, and everybody else. So there's two things. Either you risk misgendering and let them correct, or you ask. And different scenarios will allow for different strategies. So I'm not telling you start going around and be like, what's your pronouns? Which pronouns? Like, I'm not asking you to do what's your pronouns to the tune of Baby Shark. I'm just saying, if you don't know, if you are in a position to where you're going to have to use them, and the best way to get around it is just to use a person's name. You can say, well, I saw Shanika the other day, and Shanika said that Shanika was going to Target. You can use a person's name in the place of a pronoun anytime you want to. And that really solves the problem, because you can't misgender someone with their name. Now, if they tell you that's not their name anymore, just check yourself, learn a new one, and go on about it. But so what happens when you do misgender? So Nicole takes us into the next place. What happens when you do misgender someone? The new person started at work and they had a very ambiguous and or androgynous name, and they had a very androgynous look, and you are just not clear. And you go to introduce them and you say, hey, this is Callie. She just started working here. And they say, no, actually it's he, him. What do you do? Apologize, correct, and continue speaking. Do not drown them and, oh my God, I am so sorry. I would never do this. My cousin is gay. I have a trans best friend, and I am appalled. I am shocked. Oh, how, because that puts down the burden on them to hold your frustration. A simple, I am so sorry. This is Callie. He started here in HR last week. And just keep it moving. Make yourself a little note. Make sure to correct coworkers when they come out. Hey, did you see Kylie? She's going to lunch with us. Their pronouns are actually he, him. And I met them the other day. And where are we going to lunch? Chipotle? Okay, cool. But when you make a big deal of the apology piece and you go on and on, now you're looking for that person to absolve you. And they don't owe you no absolution. You made a mistake, correct? Keep talking. Move on. Who's ready for scenarios? Let's see, we got 94 people. Jesus. Let me check the chat too. It is a microaggression to mention that you have a friend that identifies that way. I do not like it. Let me see. Letitia said in the Maya Angelou voice. Yes, indeed. All right, so we have some scenarios we're going to do. Before we do that, JK, before we do that, what may come up as you practice these new pronouns, as you practice this stuff that you've learned, as you get into these scenarios, some of the things that may come up or questions that happen is, what do I do if I don't know a person's pronouns? What if I don't agree with the person's sexuality or gender? What about the bathroom arguments, and can trans people use whatever bathroom they want? What if someone comes out to me? So we're going to practice some of those scenarios. So there are 95 people in here. I cannot put 95 of you in groups. So I think I'm going to do 10 groups. Group 1 and group 6 will have question 1. Group 2 and group 7 will have question 2, and so on and so forth. So whatever your group is, it's group 1 through 5 and 6 through 10. And we'll put the questions in the chat, and we will also put the questions in the chat of the breakout room if it lets us. Otherwise, take a picture. And remember when you were young, you had to count off 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Group 1 and 6 are 1, and then it goes down from there. So if you in group 10 and group 5, you got the last question. You got question 1, 2, 3. How many questions? I gave y'all 6 questions. I did good this time. I added one because Danielle told me it would be so many people. So scratch all of that. There are 6 groups. Group 1 through 6 will go down 1 through 6. Group 7, start at number 1. Group 8, number 2. Group 9, number 3. Group 10, number 4.
And we just put the questions in the chat, so you should all see them there right now.
So I'm gonna stop sharing first and foremost. And then I'm gonna make up the breakout rooms. It is 12:31. We are making great time. I will give you off.
I'm sorry, Shana, yes, Shana scared everybody. Shana is in Kansas, so it is not 12, it is 10:30
Oh.
here. I heard somebody go, what?
Yes, I had to do a time space continuum.
Or for our friend in Boston who it's neither of those, right?
Oh, my bad.
Oh, Shauna, I already created the breakout rooms. All I have to do is open them up.
Okay, did you give them 15 minutes?
Oh, hold on. Let me go back. I didn't. Hold on.
Okay.
Jump scare.
And we can also shut it down manually if Darrell, if you can't find it, so.
Okay, okay, breakout rooms automatically. Time's up. Breakout rooms close automatically after. You want 15 minutes?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, they are coming back. They're all back now. So we've got 40, 50, 60. Yep, here we go. All yours.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. I will turn my camera on in a minute, but I'm trying to share my screen. Make sure you're muting your mics as you come in the room. I'm going to make my picture real big here so I can see everybody again. How did that go? If you had a good time in your group, put your thumbs up. Let me see if it went all right. If you just hated it and never want to see me again, don't do nothing. I don't want to know. All right, good, good, good. Is there any group that would care to share? I'm not going to make you all go over it. This was an exercise for you. I already know how to do these things. So I want to, okay, Ruben, let me find what screen you on so I can see. Okay, there you go, Ruben. Go ahead.
All right, so share conversation. Our question was, if a coworker is being misidentified, how do we handle that situation? I believe that our overall group, and that's everyone in our group, we all agree that if it continues to happen and we notice it, then pull us coworkers to the side and say, hey, this is something that you need to respect and accept. And if it will continue to move forward, then, it would be wise to professionally take it into HR. Our conversation stemmed from acceptance and respect, and it went into personal relationships. Like at home, I have a lesbian daughter, and how that relationship has developed, and the accepting and the language is important, knowing what's being said and how to be able to communicate socially, and also publicly and professionally as well. So the overall the overall mood of our group moved into more social, economical, relationship, workspace, accept and respect, and it was a beautiful conversation for all of us. Absolutely.
I love that. Thank you so much, Ruben, and thank you to the group that had that accept and respect. I love that very much, group 2. And I think the thing that just keeps being shared is that the language matters. Language is important, and we have to honor that, and we have to know better, apply what we know, and do better. I also like how that group took the person aside. We ain't out here trying to embarrass nobody, right? Well, I don't know. Sometimes I guess. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what y'all be doing, but we not out here trying to embarrass somebody at work. So pulling somebody to the side, having a little private chit chat, a little kiki, that's the best way to go about it. People are much more receptive when it's done privately. Now, if they keep publicly doing it, sometimes the only way you can respond to public things are with the public actions, and then taking it to HR. That's the way to go. And it's good because as a person, as an LGBTQ person, and as an advocate, I always appreciate when somebody advocates for me. I was in a town with a friend of mine not too long ago, and it wasn't very many Black people. And I was walking up, and the daughter was like, "I don't like that Black lady." And I was like, "Oh Lord, I don't want to go to." Oh, I mean, I could start a prison ministry if it happens. Like, you know, I'm a pastor. I can really kind of work through some things. I'm already gay. I can figure this out. But my friend, who is a white woman, man, she stepped in front of me like Marvel. Like, I felt like she was Captain America because she handled it. And for once, I didn't have to do it myself. Like, that's allyship. So having someone speak up for you, because it's exhausting always having to fight for the right to just be, that feels so good. So I appreciate that group. Anybody else? Just raise your hand. I'm going through these 90 pages of slides of people to get to.
Shauna, we do have somebody in the chat.
Oh, let's see.
You can
Come through chat.
I don't want to mispronounce her name. I will call people out in public in certain situations. I will call a white person out if they lock their door when I'm beside their car trying to get to my car.
You listen, sometimes that's why I took it back when I said it's got to be private. That's why I said, well, wait, because there are times when you do public things, sometimes you have to get a public response. And so I teach a class on the criminalization of Black men and the hyper fetishization and sexualization of our Black girls. And that is one of the things I teach, those microaggressions. How do we respond to microaggressions as allies, as advocates, and as marginalized people? So I feel you on that, Q. I don't want to say your name wrong either. Jenka says, as a white person, I do step in to intervene, but I'm also conscious of white-splaining by saying too much. That is a real thing. That is a real thing. And it's a tough place to balance, right? But I might forgive your white-splaining if you step in, if you ally me correctly, especially if you explain it to another white person. White-splain to them all day. But I totally feel that, Jenka. Y'all real good in the chat. I like that. I feel like I'm doing a whole bunch of different things at once. So you had an opportunity to do your groups. So did Miss Sherry, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yes, good morning, everyone. We were in group 5, just real quick to share, when we had the question of the 14-year-old niece comes out as transgender. So our group was pretty much, it was a great conversation, you know, supporting niece and you know, listening, and thank you for, you know, sharing that with me and you know, my take and the ladies who contributed to the conversation, you know, was okay, great. How do we support you? What do you need from us? You know, tell auntie what you need. Are you niece? Are you nephew? Are you niece few? What we doing so we can move on and be great at what it is, whatever it is we're doing. And so the conversation just led into a lot about younger children in school and having that conversation. And so I just wanted to share that, you know, we were, the consensus around that was pretty much supporting that child and that person and that self-love and letting them know to self-love themselves, you know, in supporting them.
I love that. So I'm going to ask a question for the chat crew based on that response. So this goes out to the chat crew. Your niece or nephew comes to you and tell you that they're transgender and you're the only person that knows. Do you tell their parents? Oh, some of y'all done hit with the type so fast. All right. Good job. Good job. Do not call your brother or sister and be like, child, guess what? So-and-so told me. This is not the time, okay? Because it can be very dangerous. There's a reason they chose you. So we got to be able to hold our water, right? That's the old church saying. You got to be able to hold your water, hold your mule. Don't, it's not your place. Exactly, Marcella or Marcella, whatever way we going. I don't mean to mispronounce if I did. Good job. Y'all done passed the only quiz for the course. Okay. I feel good about it. So having these hard conversations, what happens when I feel challenged? This applies in everything, whether you're challenged on race, whether you're challenged on gender, whether you're challenged on your behavior in different ways. Remain open. You might not be familiar with the comments. You might not agree. You touch somebody's hair and they break your finger. You might be mad, but listen to why the problem was a problem. Research and learn. Read a book, please. Watch a podcast, listen to a podcast, get you a documentary, because that will help give you language, but it also helps ground your arguments. So when these things happen over Thanksgiving and Betty says, what's all this about the trans people? You are able to have a conversation about that. It adds to your depth of knowledge. So you're not just saying what I said, you're saying what you know to be true. Receive the feedback. None of us know everything and we don't always get it right. Be willing to receive the feedback and get help when you need it. So like Ruben said, call HR. My pay scale say that I don't handle HR problems. I'm an IT manager. So I want to make sure that HR getting paid to do some work too. So I'm going to take the problems that are theirs to them. Ooh. So we have reached the end of our lesson today on gender diversity. I will send out the slides. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can take any questions in these last whatever amount of minutes. Then we got 4. I won't say what time it is again. I had people thinking they had skipped a couple of hours. We got a couple minutes for any questions or for you guys to, let me see what's popping in the chat.
Well, I'll say something here if no one's talking. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things I mentioned was that I was a play therapist. And in that role, I created a safe space or a brave space for children to be able to come into a room with me for 30 minutes. And however they wanted to play, they would play. The only rule we had was that they couldn't hurt me, they couldn't hurt themselves, and they couldn't put the dry sand into the wet sandbox. Other than that, if the girls wanted to play with the Tonka trucks, they could. If the boys wanted to dress up as a princess, they could. And I got to hold that very sweet space for them for 30 minutes without any judgment and any shame. And so it's like a lot of parents fear letting their girls play with certain toys and letting their boys play with certain toys, but allowing that space for creativity and exploration as far as identity goes does not mean that your child is going to grow up and be a certain way that goes outside of what you believe. So yeah, my nephew wanted his nails polished. Guess what? We went to the nail salon. My niece wanted to grow a mustache, and I said, baby, you can't grow a mustache, but I'm gonna buy you one. And I bought her one. So it's those things. Like I've seen young children, young boys walk with heels on as babies and come up, they grew up and they were heterosexual men. So that's another thing too, is making space for children to be who they are without trying to force a certain direction for them, because they'll find whatever direction works for them.
That is beautiful. Thank you for your work with our babies and for giving them brave spaces. I too try not to say safe spaces. Remember, Breonna Taylor was murdered in her own bed. So there's not a lot of safe spaces, but there are brave spaces and courageous spaces. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Shana, we have Anahi and then Ruben, who raised their.
Okay. Anahi?
Hi, it's Anahi. So based on what you asked earlier, or you said, do we tell the parents when a child comes out? I understand where you're coming from, but I am also a parent of a 15-year-old child that I would like to be taken into consideration to support my child. And I understand not all parents come from like the same space, and there are some parents that may be negative about it or violent about it. But I feel like if you already know how that parent is going to be, maybe there needs to be family therapy included and not left the parent left on the blind side, because at the end of the day, that is your child. And it's a big step in the child's life. And you know how you're creating the space of educating us. We need to take the time to educate those parents that are going through it, and why is it that they can't understand that situation to help the child. At the end of the day, you know, it's like that whole blind side, keeping the parent out of sight, out of mind. It's like that doesn't sit well with me with anything, not just with this topic, you know, with anything, because I want to protect my child and I want my child to be successful.
I totally understand that. And I can say, I would suspect and believe that, knowing that that's your stance, that your child would come to you and they wouldn't have went to a third party to come out first. Unfortunately, our LGBTQ, especially trans youth, have the highest suicide rates, the highest rates of homelessness, and the highest rates of parental abuse and alienation than any other demographic of children. And so what happens is kids don't feel safe. I do agree. There has to be a calling in of the parents that have these problems so that we can get to a space where, okay, we can work with it through you. And so maybe auntie or uncle can talk to kid and be like, what do you need to be able to tell your mom this or dad this? What is your biggest fear? How can I support you in living your truth and what I can do? Because every parent is not ready to support their child, and these babies are scared. So I agree with you. I have a 17-year-old. I would want to know too. But if there is
Can you imagine like, okay, the kid is already feeling afraid of telling their parent, but can you imagine how the parent feels in that sense? Like you said, you're a parent, but you know, it sounds like you would accept your child, but there's those parents that may not, and then you catch them with a surprise.
Yeah.
That's going to elevate that, you know,
Yeah.
instead of like settling it down. You know, it's just.
I hear you. But again, I think coming from that perspective, you're coming from a parent that would support.
Yeah.
And so you wouldn't be in that situation. But from the other side, seeing some of the kids I've had to hug, I've had to pray for, I had to find housing for because they thought they could tell their parents or they were outed, it just gets to be very dangerous. So
Shana, I do want to move it along because we do
Yes.
have 3 people. This happened the last time. Shana is she gets people talking. So we have Ruben and then Lakeisha and then Kathy. So Ruben, you want to take yourself off mute?
Yeah, just real quick, you know, while we're all here, have like this communal conscience. I want to tap in and say, you know, expectations, they lead to very big disappointments. You know, we as human beings, we're taught a certain regimen and we stick to it mentally. So we tend to take that from our home into society, and we're putting expectations on systems, processes, people, sexualities, identities, and so forth and so on. I just think that it's really important for us to come outside of, you know, what we've been taught as an expectation and just be more accepting of people, places, and things as they are. And how do we fit in to that process? Or how do we fit into that system? Or how do we become one with what's going on and not create wars or not create frictions? I think that now in our, especially in our today's world, you know, we're warring, we're not at peace, we're against, we're biased too, and it really creates a community that's that has more separation and friction than it does coming together and really be able to solve communal and then outer issues. I'm done.
I agree, Ruben. Now I had to move, so if it looked like I'm out in the sun, I am. But the room that I was using got closed, but I want to answer questions, so I just came outside. I agree, and letting go of that expectation and of what we expect and of those norms really helps us to open up more. But I don't want to diminish that. I don't want to mess it up. I don't doubt, once again, that you would be an accepting parent. I believe it. I feel it in your comment and in the hurt that you feel at the idea that someone wouldn't talk to their parent. But like Ruben said, it's that what goes on out here as an advocate for our kids and each other. You wouldn't imagine what some parents say and do.
I wasn't called. and I
Lydia, I'm
know
sorry,
that-
Lydia, we've got Lakeisha and Kathy. So if you want to raise your hand, please do so. But we have Lakeisha. So Lakeisha's been waiting. Thank you so much.
Come on,
Thank
Lakeisha.
you. I just wanted to I just wanted to touch base on, I don't want to pronounce your name wrong either, Miss Miranda. I'm one of the first people that said no in the chat. I'm a mom too, of 3 boys, 14, 20, and 27. And the thought of another parent knowing something about my kid that I don't know breaks my heart. But the reason why I said no is to hit off what Ruben had mentioned earlier. One, it's not a safety concern at that moment, with the child just coming and talking to you about their sexual preference or their agenda or whatever. I don't think it's like a safety concern at that moment. But going to tell the parent when that child is not asking you to can become a safety concern, because there is a lot of children committing suicide and so forth. So again, when I said no, I personally wouldn't go and tell the parent, but I will hope to be able to talk to that child to give them skills and tools and resources to have the confidence to come to you as the individual to talk to you. Because once I break that confidentiality, then your child who respects me is not going to never come and tell me anything. So now there's no bridge, there's no safety net for that kid, where if I'm there for them, even though I didn't tell you, again, I can still possibly provide the resources and the tools for that child to come and tell the parent later on down the line. It might not be right dead in there, but later on. If it was a safety concern within that conversation though, and I felt like that child was in some sort of danger, regardless of if I told that child no, I will definitely make it aware of someone because it's a safety concern. But as a parent, I definitely feel your pain, because I wouldn't want no other parent knowing anything about my child that they wasn't like felt comfortable enough to come and tell me themselves.
Yep. Thank you.
And Shana, I'm just gonna ask Kathy to take herself off mute. Letitia, I know you just raised your hand, but we are 10 minutes over time. So I do want to respect everybody. I know a couple people have dropped off, but I did want to just kind of wrap everything up here. So Kathy, if you can take yourself off mute. Letitia, we can put your comment in the chat. I'll definitely read it out to the group. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I want to be respectful of the time. Kathy?
Hi, I will keep it brief. I'm not a parent, but I am an auntie. And I personally think it's just the dynamic of the family. Like most of the kids know how their parents are, right? Not in every case, but I can say for my own family, that I call them my babies. For my own family, they kind of know what they can say to their parents and what they can't say to their parents, and what they can say to auntie and what they can't say to auntie. But we consider to raise the kids like a village, right? We're all playing a part in their lives. So I just think it depends on the family dynamic. That's just what I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And so I'm gonna end the conversation here, but hopefully this gave you a lot of food for thought. And wow, what a dynamic conversation going on. Thank you so much, Shana. If we can give Shana an either virtual or an actual round of applause, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It's been so just a great way to start off the Friday and the weekend. I'm going to share my screen and just take one more minute of your time. We've got next session, which is coming up on there we go. Next session is coming up on Friday, April 7th. That'll be in 2 weeks, disability awareness and inclusion. So be on the lookout for that email a week out, a day out, and an hour before. We appreciate it. Here's that sign-in code again. So if you have not already, this is a chance for you to get that QR code for the sign-in sheet. I'm going to leave it there for a couple seconds. I know I had a couple people send me some direct messages that they couldn't sign in. So there's that QR code. So again, take a moment. I'm going to ask also my colleague Darrell to put that in the chat again if you came a little late and didn't get that. So that is the QR code. Finally, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Hope you found this as informative as I did. Again, Shana, loved it. So pleased that you were able to join us. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your Friday and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you, Shana. Thank you, Tracy.
Of course. Have a good weekend.
You too.